Good afternoon, everybody. Susan here with Pumpkin Hill Stampers. This is our Friday follow along project. I'm going to be making two quick and kind of simple cards for you today, kind of going with our fall theme. I'm going to be using some of the stamps from the Harvest Hello stamp set, which I've used a few times, and I'm also going to pair it with the Best Year sentiment set. So I'm actually going to make thank you cards, but we're going to use some of the fall images. So I'm going to be using my blender pen. Now this is different than our blend markers. This is a clear tip pen and it lets us kind of watercolor our ink after we've stamped, so I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to show you the first card. So we're going to do some simple stamping. First I'm going to fold my card base in half. Remember our card bases here in the US, standard size when folded is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So however you fold up your cardstock, that's what size you want to fit into your standard size envelope. So we're just going to leave that plain for a second. We're going to do some stamping on our Whisper White piece here. So I'm going to be using Cherry Cobbler and Cinnamon Cider today. So, alright, so I want to stamp these cute little leaves that come from the Harvest Hello set. So we've got this leaf here and then that little leaf there, which when you think about pumpkins and apples, you think, okay, those are the leaves that grow on the vine and grow on the apples. But with all the leaves falling in my yard, they're really shapes of a lot of different trees. So I'm going to start with my leaf here and use my cinnamon cider. And I'm just going to kind of stamp like a falling pattern of leaves. So I'm going to kind of turn my leaf around as it's going down my cardstock. Okay, I'm just kind of making a trail of leaves and I'm just kind of twisting so they're not all in the same alignment. Okay, then I'm going to bring my blender pen in. I've just taken my tap off, and because that ink is still pretty fresh, right, I can just use my blender pen and I can pull some of that color into the image, and it just kind of gives it a light coloring to match the color that it was stamped in. So it's not super bold or solid, it's just a bit of shading. So this is a fun technique, especially for beginners, because you don't have to have a lot of markers. You can just use these blender pens with whatever color ink pads you're starting with and get some color in your images. So then you saw me just wipe this on my scrap mat. That's how you clear the ink off that tip. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with this leaf and I'm going to stamp. Now this one I think is pretty juicy. Let me double check. Yeah, that one's pretty juicy. So I'm going to stamp off. So I've inked it, then I'm going to stamp once there, and then I'm going to stamp here so it's lighter. Oh, and I forgot to switch colors. Let's switch colors. All right, the red. Yep, so I stamp off, and I'm going to put that right over the top. And I'm going to do it again. So I'm just repeating the kind of falling leaf pattern here. Just kind of filling it in, but leaving a lot of space. Okay, so there's two. Now I'm going to come back in with that same idea with my blender, and I'm just going to pull some of that color from the outline into the leaf pattern. So, and I'm not going to worry that I did that one in the two different colors. It's a handmade card. Things happen. It's okay. If it really bothered you, you could just flip the cardstock over and do it again. But we're not going to do that today. Okay, so now I have this fun patterned piece that I'm going to add to the front of my card. But now we need to do our sentiment. So I have a piece of the Cider Cinnamon cardstock, which is the color I stamped this in, and I'm going to use the thank you stamp from the Best Year stamp set. So this one says, thank you for all that you are. So I'm going to use the Cherry Cobbler ink on the Cinnamon Cider colors cardstock. So I'm just going to ink that up, and I've got my label on there so I can see through my block. I know which way it's facing. I know it's up and down. And I'm just going to stamp that right in the middle. Okay, and so now this I can put anywhere over here. So it's going to kind of hide some of that stamping I did. If I wanted to be tricky, I could hide that one. I could even flip that over and put it near the bottom if I wanted my sentiment down here. Okay, which is totally fine. But here's something fun I'm going to do. All right, I'm going to put this down, and then I've already done it, but I've stamped those leaves again on a piece of scrap paper, and I've trimmed them out. So I'm going to add these as kind of like a three-dimensional embellishment kind of around, just to give there a little bit of pop. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So let me just move this aside. So what I'm going to do is start putting my layers together. Now you'll notice on the back of these I've already put kind of mini dimensionals. So that was easy. So I'm going to get my adhesive, just going to roll it over, put some on the back. So now this is the same length as my card, so I just need to line it up with the top edge and the bottom edge and put that on. And I'm going to do the same with my sentiment. I'm just going to put it down flat. So where do I want it? I want it like this, that. I think maybe I want it there. Okay, now sometimes I flip mine over to press so that if there's any wet ink, I'm not picking it up with my fingers and smearing it on the rest of my card. So now I'm just going to pull the backers off of these three little leaves that I've already stamped, colored, and cut out. And I can make these very active. This one can overlap right there. This one I think I'm going to put right there, and this one I'll put down here. So I'm going to go, I can go right there. I think I need to give that a little snip, just because it's going to give my envelope a little trouble, but not much. So there is our first card. Okay, thank you for all that you are. And then I can also stamp on the inside and every thoughtful thing you do. So let me pull this stamp out. So I don't know that I've used it yet. I have used it, but I haven't put the label on it. So let's do a quick review of how we do the labels. So these are our cling stamps when they come. They come in our rubber, right, and they usually have backers on them. I have used it, so I've pulled my backer off already, but now I need to put the label on. So here's my label for that stamp. I'm just going to pull the backing off the label. This backing is already removed, and then I just position it like a puzzle piece down on my label. Press that on, and there's my label, ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this stamp off. So you got to get under that label to peel it off. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm just going to pick this one up with my block. So if you don't have multiple blocks, you can just switch off your stamps as you go. Alright, so it's like this. So I'm going to stamp this down like that. There we go. And then if I wanted to, I could even add a couple of leaves on the inside. So you could just do a little bit of stamped leaves on the inside. So, and I can even color those, right? That's what today's all about, using those blender pens just to add a little bit of color. Alright, so there's the first card I wanted to do for you. Okay, so I'm going to set that one aside. Now I want to do a second card for you, because these are kind of quick today. This one I'm going to make on Sahara sand. So again, I'm going to fold my cardstock in half. Now this is a nice light color, so it's kind of our neutrals. Now this time I'm going to use this little rectangle to create my embellishment. So let's move that aside for a second. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp. I'm going to switch colors this time, I think. Yeah, I'm going to do this one in the red this time. And I'm going to do this one in the brown. So we'll do that in a second. Alright, but I'm going to bring in this other stamp. So this is kind of the seeds from the pumpkin, but I'm going to use them as kind of a background stamp. So I'm going to do it with my cherry cobbler, and I'm kind of putting them in the same direction, but I'm just kind of filling the background with it. So they're not really meant to per se think about pumpkin seeds. And then this time I'm not really doing inside the lines, I'm kind of just smudging the ink to create like a watercolored background. So I'm just using the ink I've already stamped down to just create kind of a patterned background. Okay, All right, so there's that. Now I want to use my thank you stamp again. So I'm going to switch these off. Take this one off. Again, you got to get under that label to peel those off. I'll put this one back on. Okay, so I have a piece of Whisper White here. I'm going to go ahead and stamp in my red. It's Cherry Cobbler. So now I'm going to stamp just like I did before, like this, but I don't really want the whole thing this time, so I'm going to use my paper snips. First I'm going to trim off my ends, okay, and then I'm going to trim off the bottom of this sentiment. So I'm going to go right along the bottom of my thank you, leave a little bit of a gap, but use the bottom of my letters to just kind of guide my scissors. So now I can have just the thank you part of my sentiment. So I'm going to use that on here. Okay. Now I have another piece, so I just want to show you. I'm going to stamp just a couple of these leaves. Okay, so now this is just scrap paper I have from various projects. I'm going to go ahead and add the blended color. Now you might remember that the pumpkin set here, the Harvest Hellos set, has a coordinating pumpkin apple builder punch, and it will punch out that smaller leaf. But if you don't invest in the punch, you can just use your paper snips. So all I do is I bring my scissors in and I just close to the edge, come around and trim off paper. Now I'm right-handed, so I usually trim it off like that and then I come back in close. Okay, so see how easy that was? So I've done that already just to save a little time. So I have a few more of those little guys and I have a couple of the red ones. All right, I'm going to bring this card back. Here's my card base. So I have this, I'm going to have that, and then I'm going to add those onto the top. So this time, I think maybe I want to pop the whole thing up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put dimensionals on the back of my primary card here. Okay, so that's just going to give it a little bit of lift. My thank you is going to go on anywhere I want to. I think I'm going to go right across there. So I'm just going to put some adhesive, go ahead and tack that down where I'm going to put it. Okay, go ahead and pop these off. Position this in my card. So I just want to square it kind of to my side and my bottom. Okay, now last time I put these on the little dimensionals. This time I'm just going to add them with glue dots. So I just kind of, after I've got them all cut out, I just stick them on my roll here, kind of make them like stickers. You can see I'm unrolling it as I go. Right, and then I'm just going to add them. So I'm going to peel them off my roll. I'm going to add a red one on the top and a red one on the bottom, and then I've got these three. I can stick these kind of wherever I want. I just kind of want to balance it. And again, I want that tumbling leaf effect. So there we go. They're a little interactive thank you card. Okay, and again, I could stamp on the inside or I could leave it blank so I can write a whole letter in there. So there's our Follow Along Friday, guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial about using our stamps and our blender pen and our inks, and that you can make some pretty fun cards. Even if you don't want to make a pumpkin card, but you have the set, you can use those other stamps to make fun backgrounds and images. Alright, that's it, guys. I hope you have a great weekend. Make some fun cards and enjoy the nicer weather. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.